Hello everybody, welcome to my book vlog. Today we are discussing Kim Gordon's memoir, Girl in a Band. This is a book that I've been wanting to read for a while. It was published a couple of years ago. If you don't know who Kim Gordon is, she was a founding member of the rock group Sonic Youth, an American band that came out of New York in the early 1980s. A real pioneering sound that sort of merged punk rock and new wave and was sort of really avant-garde, ahead of its time. Kim Gordon was a woman who I really looked up to when I was younger, when I was growing up. As the guitarist in the band, she was always sort of on the side of the stage giving off the Ice Queen vibe, and I just thought, wow, she's so cool. Very much as we looked at Kim Deal and Tony Halliday in Curve, just someone you really wanted to be or hang out with. Why I particularly wanted to read this memoir is Kim Gordon has always been very interesting in the way she speaks about what it was like being a woman in a man scene, particularly the rock scene of the 80s and 90s, where particularly in the 90s you have the grunge coming out, which was very testosterone based, and then later the sort of the arrival of Riot Girl. But she was really ahead of her time. But she has been quite an elegant speaker and essayist on the subject. And also because Kim Gordon is a visual artist, and particularly now, and in her days with Sonic Youth, she was a pioneer of incorporating art into Sonic Youth's works, most notably using a Gerhard Richter image for an album cover. So there was a lot to draw me into this, particularly also as Kim Gordon had known to have quite a very interesting personal life. She was married for over 20 years to the lead singer Thurston Moore of Sonic Youth. And it was very interesting, so how would that dynamic work, being on tour, being married to the lead singer, and all that entails. So yes, a lot to grab onto. I had recently read, and you've probably seen the review of Patti Smith's Just Kids, which was of her growing up with Robert Mapplethorpe in New York. And though Patti Smith, I know, is a great wordsmith, I was hoping for some of the same for Kim Gordon, that she would bring to life the New York scene of the early 1980s. She'd be able to bring to life what it was like being on tour, what it smelt like, what it felt like, any of the sexual and gender politics. Even the sort of groupies, what it was like performing on stage, all these dynamics of a struggling band, sort of got great critical acclaim, but never really got the sales that they were worthy of, but they had longevity more than any other band, and who they intimate. All of this I wanted, I wanted to feel and smell Sonic Youth. And this is where this book really let me down, unfortunately, because Kim Gordon chooses not to do that. For about the first third of the book, we follow her in her childhood. She had a very difficult relationship with her parents and with her brother. They traveled a lot. They traveled sort of New York, California, Hong Kong, and you very much sort of skip the surface. Chapters are about 3 or 4 pages long and offer only very brief glimpses into what it was like being a young girl growing up. There's a real fixation with the relationship with her older brother, and how she felt being on eggshells around him certainly shaped how she would react with men later in life. But there's a long time on her childhood, and yet I still don't really know what it was like for her growing up. It was all sort of, I couldn't quite get into either Hong Kong, couldn't quite get into California, couldn't get into Hawaii, and instead you sort of have a sort of snippet here, snippet here. But I thought, okay, keep going. She certainly was very interesting about the politics of family dynamics, and I thought, okay, well, that's quite interesting. Hopefully we will get there when we get to Sonic Youth. Then when we get to Sonic Youth, Kim makes a departure. She almost decides to write a chapter around sort of big hits that Sonic Youth had, and then describe sort of how she felt when she was writing them, what was going through her mind, and sort of subsequently any examples of what it felt like to perform those songs. So as a result, I've come away from the book not actually knowing anything really about the battles Sonic Youth had in the early 1980s as a rock band trying to break through, what it was like going on tour. I don't know if they enjoyed being on tour. I don't know if they had to work really hard. I don't know what kind of deals they had to make to get the gigs that they had to get. I'm not even 100% sure where they toured to. They don't really talk about who they met. There's the odd reference to Iggy Pop. There's the odd reference to where they supported REM, but we don't know what that was like to support REM, only that she went with Michael Stipe to meet William Burroughs, and that's about a paragraph in the book. I actually came away from this book knowing more about Kurt Cobain than I did about Sonic Youth, because there's a there's a section towards the end where she talks about Kurt Cobain coming to life and how inspired she was by him and what a fragile character he was. Interestingly, Kim almost gives zero away about her relationship with Thurston Moore. I don't even know anything about their wedding day. I don't even know how he proposed. That's not in the book, which is odd. For about 25 years, she was married to the lead singer of Sonic Youth. They were the founding members, and I know nothing. I know nothing about their relationship. I don't know what it was like to work with your husband, how odd that must have been, how many times you must have thought, oh my God, this is amazing, and other times you thought, oh God, give me some space. I have no idea. I have no idea if they had a happy marriage. I couldn't tell you. None of that is in the book. It's really odd. However, there are some very interesting things, like she was a childhood friend with Larry Gagosian, who would grow up to be, the most powerful art dealer in the world today. She talks quite a bit about how the Gerhard Richter album cover came together. She talks a lot about the creation of art, about what she was thinking, how she was feeling at the time. So in that way, it's all quite sort of psychoanalytical. However, as a memoir of someone who wanted to read something about what it was like to be in this band, what it was like to produce Hole's album, there's a few references to Courtney Love, but there's nothing really about Kim herself, how she must have fought for a woman, the tricky interview questions, the sort of sly comments. Did she get any of that? Was she ever harassed? Was she ever assaulted? I don't know. Was she ever mocked? I have no idea. And that just not really sort of getting under the skin of what it was like for 20 years to be a girl in a band. It was deeply frustrating. I'm glad I read it, however, having said that, because I am a fan of hers. But if you were looking at this book to be something along the lines of Patti Smith's Just Kids, if you were looking to get a scent of what New York was like in the early 1980s, you're going to be disappointed. However, if you want to read about Kurt Cobain, Courtney Love, Madonna, a bit about Iggy Pop, then it's a good beach read, but I have to say I didn't come away completely satisfied. Sorry.